Genesis chapter summaries, 1 to 50. Published by BibleVise. Embark on a journey through the foundational book of the Bible, Genesis. These Genesis chapter summaries unpack the captivating narratives, from creation and the fall of man to the lives of patriarchs like Abraham and Joseph. Uncover the rich tapestry of this ancient text and its enduring legacy. When you are done reading here, you may also want to check out our complete list of Bible chapter summaries for every book of the Bible. Book of Genesis summary by chapter. Chapter 1. Creation Symphony. In the beginning, the world was formless and void. Then, God spoke light into existence, separating day from night. He created the heavens, the earth, and the seas. He filled the earth with vegetation, and the heavens with celestial bodies to mark time. God created all living creatures of the sea, the air, and the land. Finally, He created humanity in His own image, male and female, blessing them with the responsibility to rule over the earth. God beheld all that He had made and declared it very good. Thus, the 7 days of creation were completed, and God rested on the seventh day, making it holy. Read more. Genesis chapter 1 summary. Chapter 2. Paradise in Eden. A more detailed account of humanity's creation unfolds. God formed the first man, Adam, from the dust of the ground and breathed life into him. God planted a beautiful garden in Eden for Adam to tend and enjoy its abundance. God saw that it was not good for man to be alone, so He created a helper for Adam from one of his ribs, forming the first woman, Eve. Adam and Eve lived in perfect harmony with God and nature in the Garden of Eden. However, God placed a specific restriction on them. They were forbidden to eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Read more. Genesis chapter 2 summary. Chapter 3. Temptation and the Fall. A cunning serpent appears and tempts Eve, questioning God's motives and assuring her no harm would come from defying His command. Eve succumbs to the temptation and eats the forbidden fruit. She shares it with Adam, and he also partakes. Their eyes are opened to their nakedness and they feel shame. Their disobedience has profound consequences. They hide from God, who curses the serpent, the ground, and introduces pain and toil into their lives. Eve and Adam are banished from the Garden of Eden, forever separated from the tree of life. Read more. Genesis chapter 3 summary. Chapter 4. Cain and Abel's tragedy. Adam and Eve have 2 sons, Cain and Abel. Cain works the land as a farmer, and Abel becomes a shepherd. Both brothers bring offerings to God, but he favors Abel's offering. Cain, fueled by jealousy, murders his brother Abel. Confronted by God, Cain denies responsibility for his brother. God punishes Cain, making him a wanderer and placing a mark upon him for his protection. Read more. Genesis chapter 4 summary. Chapter 5. Adam's genealogy. This chapter traces Adam's lineage through Seth, his third son, all the way to Noah. The lifespan of these patriarchs is astonishingly long compared to modern humanity. The recurring phrase, "and then he died," emphasizes the inescapable reality of death that resulted from the fall in Eden. Read more. Genesis chapter 5 summary. Chapter 6. Humanity's depravity and the Great Flood. Humanity multiplies, but so does their wickedness. God is deeply grieved by the evil rampant within human hearts. He resolves to wipe out humanity, with the exception of one righteous man named Noah who found favor with the Lord. God instructs Noah to build an ark and gather pairs of every kind of animal to save them from an impending flood meant to cleanse the earth. Read more. Genesis chapter 6 summary. Chapter 7. Deluge and Preservation. The time of judgment arrives. Noah, his family, and the animals safely enter the ark as the rain begins. The fountains of the deep erupt, and the earth is submerged in a global flood for 40 days and 40 nights. All life outside the ark perishes. As the waters recede, the ark comes to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Read more. Genesis chapter 7 summary. Chapter 8. God's covenant and rainbow. Noah sends out a raven and then a dove to see if there's dry land. The dove returns with an olive branch, signaling the end of the flood. Noah, his family, and all the animals leave the ark and Noah builds an altar, offering sacrifices that please God. God makes a covenant with Noah, promising never again to destroy all living creatures by flood. As a sign of the covenant, God sets a rainbow in the clouds. Read more. Genesis chapter 8 summary. Chapter 9. Noah's prophecy and Canaan's curse. Noah plants a vineyard and makes wine. One day, he becomes drunk and lies naked in his tent. Ham, his youngest son, sees his father's nakedness and disrespects him. Noah awakens and curses Ham's son, Canaan, foretelling servitude to his brothers. Noah blesses Shem and Japheth, promising their descendants will be great. This prophecy plays a significant role in the development of biblical history. Read more. Genesis chapter 9 summary. Chapter 10. The Table of Nations. This chapter, often referred to as the Table of Nations, details the lineages of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It describes the various peoples who descended from them and the regions they settled in after the flood. This chapter serves as a geographic and ethnic framework for the rest of the book and beyond. Read more. Genesis chapter 10 summary. Chapter 11. Tower of Babel and the Scattering of Peoples. Humanity, united in language and purpose, decides to build a tower in the land of Shinar, reaching for the heavens. They see this as a way to make a name for themselves and avoid being scattered across the earth. God, displeased with their arrogance, intervenes. He confuses their language, making them speak different tongues. Unable to understand each other, they are forced to abandon their project and are scattered across the face of the earth, taking their diverse languages with them. Read more. Genesis chapter 11 summary. Chapter 12. Abram's call and journey. God calls Abram, who will later become known as Abraham, to leave his homeland and family and journey to a land he will show him. This land will become a great nation through whom all the families of the earth will be blessed. Abram obeys, taking his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot with him. They travel to Canaan, a land God promises to give to Abram's descendants. A famine forces them to go down to Egypt for a time, where Abram experiences trouble due to his deception about Sarai's identity. Read more. Genesis chapter 12 summary. Chapter 13. Abram and Lot separate. Abram and Lot, both having acquired significant wealth and livestock, find their possessions becoming too numerous to manage together. To avoid conflict, Abram allows Lot to choose first where he wants to settle. Lot chooses the well-watered region near Sodom and Gomorrah, while Abram remains in the land of Canaan. Despite their separation, Abram reaffirms his commitment to God's promises. Read more. Genesis chapter 13 summary. Chapter 14. Abram rescues Lot. 4 kings wage war against 5 other kings, including the king of Sodom where Lot resides. Lot is captured in the battle, and Abram, upon learning of this, gathers 318 men to pursue the victors. He strategically defeats the larger army and rescues Lot and the other captives, along with all their possessions. Read more. Genesis chapter 14 summary. Chapter 15. Covenant with Abram. God appears to Abram in a vision, reassuring him of his covenant promises and his future descendants as numerous as the stars. However, Abram expresses his anxiety about having no heir. God institutes a covenant ceremony with Abram, promising to give him a son in a land flowing with milk and honey. Abram believes God, and his faith is counted as righteousness. Read more. Genesis chapter 15 summary. Chapter 16. Hagar and Ishmael. Sarai, still childless, proposes a plan for Abram to have a child through her maidservant, Hagar. Hagar conceives and gives birth to Ishmael. However, God reaffirms his covenant with Abram, promising a son directly through Sarai when she is 90 years old. Read more. Genesis chapter 16 summary. Chapter 17. Covenant of circumcision. God appears to Abram, now renamed Abraham, and establishes a permanent covenant with him and his descendants. This covenant signifies a special relationship between God and the chosen people. As a visible sign of this covenant, God commands circumcision for all males in Abraham's household. God reveals that Sarah, not Sarai, will bear a son named Isaac, and promises to establish an everlasting covenant with him. Ishmael, though blessed, is not part of this specific covenant promise. Read more. Genesis chapter 17 summary. Chapter 18. 3 visitors and destruction of Sodom. 3 divine visitors come to Abraham, revealing that Sarah will indeed give birth to a son in her old age. They also inform Abraham about the impending destruction of the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot resides. Read more. Genesis chapter 18 summary. Chapter 19. Escape from Sodom and Gomorrah. 2 angels warn Lot about the coming destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and urge him to flee with his family. They are instructed not to look back as they escape the city. Lot's wife disobeys and turns back, becoming a pillar of salt as a reminder of the consequences of disobedience. Read more. Genesis chapter 19 summary. Chapter 20. Abraham and Abimelech in Gerar. Abraham and Sarah travel to Gerar, where Abraham again deceives people about Sarah's identity, fearing for his safety. God intervenes to protect Sarah, and Abimelech, the king of Gerar, recognizes his wrongdoing and makes a covenant with Abraham. Read more. Genesis chapter 20 summary. Chapter 21. Birth of Isaac and Ishmael's banishment. Sarah miraculously gives birth to Isaac as God had promised. As Isaac grows, tension arises between him and Ishmael. Sarah insists on Hagar and Ishmael's departure, and God assures Abraham that he will take care of them. Hagar and Ishmael wander in the wilderness until God intervenes, providing them with water and promising descendants through Ishmael. Read more. Genesis chapter 21 summary. Chapter 22. The test of faith, sacrifice of Isaac. God tests Abraham's faith and obedience by asking him to sacrifice his son Isaac on a mountain. Abraham, heartbroken but resolute to obey God, prepares to do so. Just as he raises the knife, an angel intervenes, stopping the sacrifice and providing a ram as a substitute offering. Abraham demonstrates his unwavering faith in God. Read more. Genesis chapter 22 summary. Chapter 23. Death and burial of Sarah. Sarah dies at the age of 127. Abraham mourns and seeks a burial place for her in the land of Canaan. He negotiates with Ephron the Hittite and purchases a cave in Machpelah for Sarah's tomb. Read more. Genesis chapter 23 summary. Chapter 24. Finding a wife for Isaac. Abraham, now old, sends his most trusted servant to his homeland to find a suitable wife for Isaac from among his own kin. The servant, guided by God, finds Rebekah, who agrees to return with him and becomes Isaac's wife. Read more. Genesis chapter 24 summary. Chapter 25. Death of Abraham, and the birth of Esau and Jacob. Abraham takes another wife, Keturah, and has several more children. Eventually, he dies at the age of 175 and is buried alongside Sarah in the cave of Machpelah. Before his death, Abraham gives gifts to his sons from Keturah, but he leaves the bulk of his inheritance to Isaac, his son with Sarah. Isaac and Rebekah also struggle with infertility for many years. Finally, Rebekah conceives twins. Even before their birth, the twins struggle in the womb, foreshadowing the future conflict between them. Read more. Genesis chapter 25 summary. Chapter 26. Isaac and Rebekah in Gerar. A famine strikes the land, and Isaac, following in his father's footsteps, travels to Gerar, encountering Abimelech, the king. Similar to Abraham, Isaac deceives people about Rebekah's identity, fearing for his safety. However, God intervenes to protect them, and Isaac prospers in the land. Read more. Genesis chapter 26 summary. Chapter 27. Blessing of Isaac, deception and Esau's anger. Isaac, now old and blind, prepares to bless his elder son, Esau, the firstborn. Rebekah, favoring Jacob, the younger twin, devises a plan to deceive Isaac. She disguises Jacob to look and smell like Esau and presents him to receive the blessing. Isaac, unknowingly blessing Jacob, grants him the birthright and the promise of land and numerous descendants. When Esau arrives with his offering, he is furious to discover he has been deceived. He vows revenge against Jacob, who flees for his life. Read more. Genesis chapter 27 summary. Chapter 28. Jacob's dream and journey to Haran. Fearing Esau's wrath, Jacob leaves his home and travels to Haran, the land of his mother's family. On his journey, he stops for the night and has a dream of a ladder reaching from heaven to earth with angels ascending and descending. God reaffirms the covenant promises made to Abraham and Isaac, and assures Jacob that he will be protected and his descendants will be numerous. Read more. Genesis chapter 28 summary. Chapter 29. Jacob and Laban's daughters. Jacob arrives in Haran and meets Rachel, the daughter of his uncle Laban. He agrees to work for Laban 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. However, Laban deceives Jacob, tricking him into marrying Leah, Rachel's older sister, first. Jacob then works for another 7 years to marry Rachel. Read more. Genesis chapter 29 summary. Chapter 30. Jacob's family grows. Both Leah and Rachel struggle with infertility, leading to competition and tension between them. They each use their maidservants as surrogates, resulting in the birth of 11 sons and 1 daughter for Jacob. Read more. Genesis chapter 30 summary. Chapter 31. Jacob's escape from Laban. After working for Laban for 20 years, Jacob, fearing his uncle's growing resentment, decides to flee with his family and possessions. He secretly departs without informing Laban, who pursues them. Read more. Genesis chapter 31 summary. Chapter 32. Jacob prepares for Esau's arrival. Jacob wrestles with a mysterious figure during the night, which is interpreted as an encounter with God. He receives a new name, Israel, and prepares for the potentially dangerous reunion with his brother Esau. Read more. Genesis chapter 32 summary. Chapter 33. Reconciliation with Esau. Jacob sends gifts ahead to appease Esau and prepares himself for a possible confrontation. As they approach each other, Esau unexpectedly falls on Jacob's neck and embraces him, forgiving his brother for the past deception. Read more. Genesis chapter 33 summary. Chapter 34. The rape of Dinah and the slaughter of Shechem. Jacob's daughter, Dinah, is violated by Shechem, the son of Hamor, the ruler of the city of Shechem. Motivated by revenge and anger, Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, deceive the men of Shechem by having them circumcised as part of a supposed treaty. While the men are still recovering from the circumcision, Simeon and Levi attack the city, killing all the males, including Shechem and Hamor. Jacob is deeply troubled by his sons' actions, fearing retaliation from the surrounding Canaanite tribes. He urges them to move on, and they journey to Bethel, where God reaffirms his covenant with Jacob and renames him Israel. Read more. Genesis chapter 34 summary. Chapter 35. Death of Rachel and arrival in Bethlehem. On their journey, Rachel goes into labor and dies while giving birth to Jacob's 12th son, Joseph. She is buried in Bethlehem, marking the land where Jacob's family will eventually settle. Jacob continues on to Hebron, where his father Isaac lives. Read more. Genesis chapter 35 summary. Chapter 36. The generations of Esau, Edom. This chapter details the lineage of Esau, also known as Edom, Jacob's twin brother. It describes his descendants and the kings who ruled over the land of Edom. This chapter serves to establish the parallel ancestral line of Esau while focusing the narrative on Jacob's descendants, who become the people of Israel. Read more. Genesis chapter 36 summary. Chapter 37. Joseph's dreams and the beginning of conflict. Joseph, Jacob's favorite son, has vivid dreams that foretell his future greatness and authority over his brothers. He shares these dreams, which boastfully portray him ruling over his family, causing resentment and jealousy among his brothers. Read more. Genesis chapter 37 summary. Chapter 38. Judah and Tamar. This chapter interrupts the story of Joseph to focus on Judah, one of Jacob's sons. Judah's interactions with his daughter-in-law Tamar reveal complex family dynamics and foreshadow future themes of betrayal and redemption. Read more. Genesis chapter 38 summary. Chapter 39. Joseph in Egypt, temptation and false accusation. Joseph is sold by his brothers to Ishmaelite traders and ends up in Egypt as a slave in the household of Potiphar, an Egyptian official. Through his hard work and God's favor, Joseph rises to a position of trust and manages Potiphar's household. However, Potiphar's wife falsely accuses Joseph of attempted assault, leading to his imprisonment. Read more. Genesis chapter 39 summary. Chapter 40. Joseph interprets dreams in prison. While imprisoned, Joseph demonstrates his God-given ability to interpret dreams. He accurately interprets the dreams of two fellow prisoners, the baker and the cupbearer. This builds his reputation within the prison and foreshadows his future rise to power. Read more. Genesis chapter 40 summary. Chapter 41. Pharaoh's dreams and Joseph's rise to power. 2 years later, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, has troubling dreams that none of his wise men can interpret. The cupbearer, released from prison, remembers Joseph's ability and recommends him to Pharaoh. Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams as a 7-year cycle of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. He advises Pharaoh to prepare for the famine by storing grain during the plentiful years. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom and insight, Pharaoh appoints him as the viceroy of Egypt, giving him authority over the entire land to prepare for the coming famine. Read more. Genesis chapter 41 summary. Chapter 42. Jacob's sons go to Egypt for food. The famine predicted by Joseph's interpretation of Pharaoh's dreams has arrived, affecting not only Egypt but also Canaan, where Jacob and his sons reside. Hearing that there is grain available in Egypt, Jacob sends his 10 sons, excluding Benjamin, the youngest, to go and buy food. Read more. Genesis chapter 42 summary. Chapter 43. The brothers return to Egypt. The brothers arrive in Egypt and appear before Joseph, now the powerful viceroy, who does not recognize them. He accuses them of being spies and imprisons Simeon. He demands they return with their youngest brother Benjamin as proof of their honesty. Read more. Genesis chapter 43 summary. Chapter 44. The hidden goblet and Judah's plea. Fearing their return to Canaan without food and Simeon, the brothers set out again for Egypt, this time taking Benjamin with them. Unbeknownst to them, Joseph has his silver goblet placed in Benjamin's sack. Upon reaching Egypt, the brothers are accused of stealing the goblet. When the goblet is found in Benjamin's sack, the brothers are terrified and plead with Joseph, particularly Judah, who emerges as a courageous leader and expresses his willingness to be enslaved in Benjamin's place. Read more. Genesis chapter 44 summary. Chapter 45. Joseph reveals his identity. Overcome with emotion and unable to maintain his disguise any longer, Joseph reveals his true identity to his brothers. He forgives them for their past betrayal, explaining how God used their evil intentions for good purposes, saving lives during the famine. Read more. Genesis chapter 45 summary. Chapter 46. Jacob goes to Egypt. Joseph sends his brothers back to Canaan to retrieve their father, Jacob, and their families. He assures them of his protection and instructs them to settle in the land of Goshen in Egypt. Read more. Genesis chapter 46 summary. Chapter 47. Jacob meets Pharaoh and settles in Goshen. Jacob, initially hesitant about going to Egypt, receives a vision from God encouraging him to go. He reunites with Joseph and meets Pharaoh, expressing his gratitude and seeking permission to dwell in the land of Goshen. Read more. Genesis chapter 47 summary. Chapter 48. Jacob blesses Joseph's sons. As Jacob approaches the end of his life, he gathers his sons to bless them. He places his hands on Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, intentionally crossing his arms so that the younger Ephraim receives the greater blessing, signifying a shift in the birthright lineage. Read more. Genesis chapter 48 summary. Chapter 49. Jacob's prophecy and death. Jacob gathers his sons one last time and delivers a prophetic message foretelling their future and the characteristics of the tribes that will descend from them. He then blesses each son individually, offering specific guidance and predictions for their descendants. Finally, Jacob dies in Egypt at the age of 147. Read more. Genesis chapter 49 summary. Chapter 50. Joseph's farewell and death. Joseph mourns his father's death and instructs his servants to embalm Jacob's body according to Egyptian custom. Fearing further retaliation from their brothers, Joseph's brothers seek forgiveness once again. Joseph reassures them of his love and God's continued presence, reminding them of his earlier words. You intended to harm me, but God meant it for good, to achieve this present outcome, to preserve many people alive. The book of Genesis ends with Joseph's death at the age of 110. His body is embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt, awaiting the day when the Israelites will be led out of the land by Moses. Read more. Genesis chapter 50 summary.